This is a show about what we learned this week.
Okay. What's it called?
It's called This is What We Learned This Week. What is it called? Is it called What We Learned This Week? This is what we learned this week.
Perfect.
Okay.
My name is Selma. I'm a sophomore majoring in psych, minoring in data science, and this week I learned, I'm taking Psych 310 or developmental psych, which is basically like about the psychology of children and how their brains develop into like adolescence and adulthood. And we were learning about how about object permanence and how babies don't have object permanence, and like when sort of like you leave a parent leaves their small child and the small child like just like clings onto them and starts crying and stuff like that. That's because the child once like the parent is out of their sight, they genuinely believe their parents have like ceased to exist. So like they don't have like they don't have the understanding that, oh yeah, like just because I don't see this thing in front of me doesn't mean it's like, like
it doesn't exist.
Yeah, so
okay.
like that's why like they get really upset, and I thought that was like really interesting. But yeah, that's one thing I learned this week.
My younger brother, he's 8 now, but that explains some things.
Yeah.
For me, my name is Anika. I am majoring in American Studies, and this week I learned in my American Studies like junior seminar class, we were talking about this reading called How to Hide an Empire, and it was kind of talking about the U.S. and how the different territories like Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, like they're kind of out of the mind of like the American citizen. They're just like outside of our scope because like the label of territory kind of hides those colonization imperial efforts that America had over there. And it's kind of interesting to think about like where you are not immune to propaganda, like just that the way that hides the efforts of like imperialism in the territories and then kind of alienates and cuts them off from America, just like hiding that history. And I guess like some random fact I learned is that the Filipino peso, like the design of that currency, is actually what inspired the US dollar. Like the US dollar is not like an American invention in and of itself, like the way it looks like. So that's what I learned this week.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Well, that was really interesting. I'm Ryan. I'm majoring in English and Film and Media Studies, and this week in my documentary photography class, we had a really interesting class where we went to the production room and we had a session where we like practiced taking portrait photos and like lighting them and getting creative with like how to light the portrait, like different angles, the effect of different angles. And yeah, it was a lot of fun because there's like I think there's 16 of us, and we were all in the room taking photos of people, and people were taking turns modeling, and it was just it was a lot of fun.
Is that like in the library? Like the
Yes.
Oh,
the
okay.
Reader Media Center.
Oh, gotcha.
So, did you like happen to learn anything like new about like lighting or like the technical aspects of like?
I wouldn't say that I learned anything new. I would say it was more just like the application of what I had already learned in a way that I hadn't done before. Because I do photography a lot as a hobby, but I rarely take pictures of people.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fun to just apply like different techniques to people for the first time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is there any way to connect the dots between the three things that you've learned?
No.
Taking pictures of babies. I
mean, perhaps if you since babies have a problem with object permanence, perhaps if you wanna like prevent them from crying,
Show them a picture.
Show
of
them
it.
a
shot of their parents.
Yeah.
They're all so different.
Well, I mean, you talked about like propaganda, and
Oh yeah.
photography is like one of the by far the most propagandistic art forms there is. I mean, just like the act of taking a picture is like an act of inclusion and exclusion, you know? Every
Oh,
time you take a picture, you're excluding a ton of what's actually there.
that
Oh yeah.
reminds me of something because I forgot to mention, like, in that reading, like, when we think of the United States, like, on a map, you see that typical, like,
Hmm.
the state shape of the United States and maybe, Alaska, Hawaii. And, like, we never think about the territories
Hmm.
in that, like, geographical sense because they're never on the logo of the US.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. If it was included on the like maps every time you saw the US in those like boxes, you know, like Alaska and Hawaii are, maybe people would pay more attention to the fact that we still have like these colonies, you know, just
Yeah.
they're not even like fully part of the United States. Like they don't have the same rights as like Hawaii, which is also a colony, but at least it has representation in the Congress.
Yeah.
Right.